Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria O'Brien. I am one of the co founders of the IWD Caribbean Tech Summit. And today is our fourth day of our 8 day schedule. It may seem a little bit ambitious, but really, it's just a lot of passion and dedication that went into this format last year. And it was so successful that we decided to repeat it this year to continue the dialogue. Very often, these events are very disconnected year to year, but we really do believe that we're trying to build a continuing dialogue around these topics. And this is actually one of our topics from last year, which is navigating opportunities, mentorship, networking, and internships. And it really has been a very amazing journey, seeing these conversations evolve, seeing these talks evolve, seeing this platform evolve. I'm so proud to be here today as your host. And with no further ado, we're going to get directly into our first speaker. Our first speaker today is none other than the amazing Sequoia Patrick. She is the global program lead for Google Women Tech Makers. And her topic today is around building a global DEI ecosystem. Sequoia is a global program manager with the developer relations unit at Google, leading women tech makers. This program aims to provide visibility, community, and resources for women who thrive in technology. Prior to joining the developer relations team, she was part of the Chrome enterprise team, owning customer first initiatives to drive adoption and scale of the Chrome product. Sequoia holds 2 degrees from Auburn University, one in industrial and systems engineering, as well as an MBA with a concentration on information systems. War Eagle. Outside of her core role at Google, she dabbles in a bit of real estate investing, which has become more of a passion project. Above all, she enjoys traveling, working out, food, and spending time with her family, friends, and sweet dog Drizzy. So, thank you so much, Sequoia. She could not be here live today. However, she sent us her recorded talk. We are very happy to share it with everyone. So, here we go.
Hello, everyone. I am Sequoia Patrick, the global lead of the Women Tech Makers program, and I am truly excited to be here today to talk with you during your Caribbean IWD event. I want to talk about the importance of building a global DEI ecosystem, especially within the tech industry. So, as we all know, the tech industry is one of the most important and influential industries in the world. It is also one of the most diverse industries with people from all over the world working within it. However, there is still challenges that need to be addressed in order to create a healthy and diverse tech ecosystem. One of the biggest challenges is the lack of diversity in leadership positions. According to a study by the National Center for Women in Information Technology, women make up only 26% of the tech workforce and only 12% of tech leadership positions. This lack of diversity can lead to a number of problems, including a lack of innovation, a lack of understanding of the user's needs, and a lack of trust. A lack of innovation because studies show that teams with diverse members that have people from different backgrounds bring different perspectives, as well as different ideas to the table. A lack of understanding of users' needs because tech products and services are often designed by people who are not a good representation of the people who use them, leading to products and services that are not user friendly, therefore not adopted because they do not meet the needs of all the users. And finally, a lack of trust. People from underrepresented groups may be less likely to use tech products and services if they do not feel they are represented in the tech industry. They will simply shy away from those, feeling like it's just not for me. So there are a number of things that can be done to address these challenges, including, first, you have to promote diversity in your hiring and promotion practices. Companies and organizations need to make a conscious effort to hire and promote people from underrepresented groups. This can be done by setting goals for diversity, creating inclusion hiring practices, and providing mentorship and development opportunities for these groups. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about mentorship in depth because I think it's so important a little later on. So next, you have to support diversity and inclusion initiatives. There are a number of organizations that are working to promote diversity and inclusion in tech. So how can you help, you might ask? Well, you can support by donating money, by volunteering your time, and spreading the word about the work that they are doing. Third, be sure you are educating the public about the importance of diversity. Many people are not aware of the benefits of diversity in tech, and we need to challenge them to think about the world in a new way. This is so important to educate them in order to build support for the change, as well as educating them on what may be their own biases that they may not truly be aware of. Finally, it truly starts within. So we can start by being more aware of our own biases and prejudices. We can also challenge ourselves to be more open to new experiences and new people. Hold ourselves and others accountable means calling out discrimination and microaggressions and speaking up when you see injustice. We can also be allies. Be allies to the people from those marginalized groups by listening to their experiences, educating ourselves about their issues, and standing up for them when they are being discriminated against. This means recognizing and appreciating the different cultures, backgrounds, and experiences of people that may not necessarily look like you, or come from where you come from, or, just are in your region of the world. I truly do believe that building a global DEI ecosystem is one of the most important things we can do to create a better future for our world. When we create a world where everyone is valued and respected, we create a world that is more innovative, more creative, and more prosperous, and where everyone belongs. By working together, we can build a global DEI ecosystem that is more just, equitable, and inclusive for everyone. I'm so inspired by the many people who are working to do just that. I'm inspired by the students who are speaking out against injustice, the activists who are fighting for change, and the leaders who are creating a more inclusive workplace, like our Women Tech Maker ambassadors. So speaking of students, or the younger generation, or even someone who just wants to make a career change, that's why mentoring is so important. And to create opportunities for mentoring underrepresented groups in tech will really help to nurture those tech careers. Mentoring can be both a valuable experience for the mentor and the mentee. It's not a one-way street. For the mentor, mentoring can be a way to give back and help others to succeed. It can also be a way to stay up to date on the latest trends in the tech industry. I, for one, know that I learn from the younger generation all the time. For the mentee, mentoring can be a way to learn from someone who has more experience, who can give them advice on career development, networking, and even better ways of approaching conflict in their careers. There is a reason that companies do this well, have great success in achieving their diversity targets. And that's because mentoring helps to increase diversity, improve retention rates, promote innovation, provide career development opportunities, which could include things like providing access to training programs, conferences, and other resources. Build a stronger tech community by creating a supportive work environment and a culture of inclusion and respect.
Just 1 second, everyone, while I add Sequoia back really quickly. Right. And we're going to Just have a little bit of technical difficulties. Going to add her back in a minute.
Up to date on the latest trends in the tech industry. I, for one, know that I learn from the younger generation all the time. For the mentee, mentoring can be a way to learn from someone who has more experience, who can give them advice on career development, networking, and even better ways of approaching conflict in their careers. There is a reason that companies do this well, have great success in achieving their diversity targets. And that's because mentoring helps to increase diversity, improve retention rates, promote innovation, provide career development opportunities, which could include things like providing access to training programs, conferences, and other resources. For the mentor, mentoring can be a way to give back and help others to succeed. It can also be a way to stay up to date on the latest trends in the tech industry. I, for one, know that I learn from the younger generation all the time. For the mentee, mentoring can be a way to learn from someone who has more experience, who can give them advice on career development, networking, and even better ways of approaching conflict in their careers. There is a reason that companies do this well, have great success in achieving their diversity targets. And that's because mentoring helps to increase diversity, improve retention rates, promote innovation, provide career development opportunities, which could include things like providing access to training programs, conferences, and other resources. Build a stronger tech community by creating a supportive work environment and a culture of inclusion and respect. I could go on and on. But more than anything, it's a great way to give back to the tech community and to help others succeed. If you are interested in mentoring in tech, I encourage you to get involved in whatever capacity your schedule allows. So you might ask, how are we as women tech makers working towards these goals of building a healthy tech ecosystem where everyone has the opportunity to succeed regardless of their backgrounds? So our mission for Women Tech Makers is to provide women with community, resources, and visibility so that all women can thrive in tech. Community, so that they have that safe space to go to and for that community to rely on. Resources like training and access to help in furthering their lives and their careers, and visibility to ensure we are telling the amazing stories of the women in our program because we see them as role models and know how important it is for us to do the same. For young girls to come across that video or that blog post or woman being featured on a panel discussion and think, hey, she looks like me, and if she can do it, I can too. So as I wrap up, I'll talk a little bit about our theme for this year for International Women's Day, and it's Dare to Be. And that can show up however it resonates with you. But I'll just pose these questions. Are you daring to be bold? Are you daring to be brave? Are you daring to be the change that you want to see in the world? If not, I do challenge you to be that change. As I mentioned earlier, it starts within, with you. We all know that doing this work isn't easy, but it is so incredibly important. We all have a role to play in creating a better future for our world. Together, let's go out and change the narrative around the global tech ecosystem, making sure that everyone has a seat at the table. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Sequoia, for a great address, which we will replay at the end of today for anyone who wants to see it from the beginning. We had some technical difficulties earlier. I hope that that it won't continue, but just in case it does, we promise that we will give you another opportunity to see any talks that had any interruptions. Obviously, the words of our speakers are very important to us. This is really a platform where we take great pride in allowing speakers to tell their story, to give their perspective from their personal point of view, because it is these personal stories that are going to help us change the DEI landscape. So I would like to introduce our next speaker, who is none other than Deborah Benjamin. Um, Deborah is currently the managing director for ASCO Logistics Limited, Trinidad and Suriname. Oh, wow. An operations management professional with 15 plus years management and experience, working with conglomerates in regional Caribbean markets with focus on sales, marketing, retail, and supply chain segments, with a track record of overseeing company revenues up to US 48 million and leading teams up to 200 persons and management teams of 9. So this is a woman who has been through every aspect of the pipeline. She specializes in distributor operations and retaining retail operations with lagging sales to greater profitability. So while Deborah is in studio early, I'm not sure if she's ready to come on screen. She's supposed to come on at 5:10. I just wanted to touch base a little bit on the importance of some of the things that Sequoia just touched on. So this year, when we were challenged with the theme Dare to Be, we decided to focus on Dare to Be Caribbean. And the reason for this is two things. One, from the work that we do through the Tech Summit, as well as the work that we do through DevFest, and very soon work that we'll be doing through Anita B, as I help develop the Caribbean community for Anita B. We have seen quite a lot of work being done by Caribbean leaders to improve the tech landscape. And what we're hoping to face as a community and discuss here during this conference, this summit, is that we would like to discuss what it means for the Caribbean identity and experience to be included in the solutions that we make, in the programs that we design, in the meetings that we have about the change that we're going to implement in the country. What do the things mean when we don't consider the Caribbean perspective? Very often, I think something that we can agree on is that here in the Caribbean, I'm not too sure if you've ever heard the term freshwater or anything like that. You know, we do get accused a lot of importing our innovation or importing methodologies that don't have anything to do with our Caribbean culture, our Caribbean history, or the needs of our Caribbean peoples. What I myself, as well as my partners, are advocating for this year is the inclusion of the Caribbean identity and experience in the design of the solutions and social impact programs that are being provided for us. There is something that a quote that I was given to by a friend who's a youth leader, and I've started to use it ever since then because it's a perfect user experience quote, which is nothing for us or about us without us. And when you think about social solutions from that perspective, when you think about, oh, great, Deborah says she's ready. When you think about social solutions from that perspective, I mean, even looking at the work that Deborah has done within the Caribbean, you know, we need people who understand the Caribbean experience to be involved in the solutions that are being created for them. So as we pursue this journey, I, as one of the co-founders, do invite you to join us as we continue to advance things past the summit into initiatives and programs that we believe are going to move the needle forward for diversity, equity, and inclusion for the Caribbean. Thank you so much. And with no further ado, I'm going to add Deborah to the stage. Hello, Deborah.
Hi, Maria. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited for your talk. That bio was, it was one of the most effective bios I have ever read. It was short, it was concise, it was packed with, the storytelling that is so important for a woman leader. You might maybe you might want to do a talk on how to write a perfect bio because that bio was awesome. So, what will you be talking to us about today?
Okay, so today I'm so happy to come behind our last speaker
Sequoia.
because
Yeah, she's great.
Sequoia, who touched on diversity, equity, and inclusion, because as Caribbean women, I mean, we embody diversity, equity, and inclusion. I mean, we are such a varied mixture of races, religions, cultures, everything, and we really embody what DEI means. And even when I speak to my international counterparts and so forth, and the international shareholders and so on, speak about what's the strategy for DEI and how do we invoke more of this into the organization and so forth. I said, well, we've never really had a strategy in the Caribbean because we embody it. We live it every day. We are amongst a varied, set of cultures, races, religions, everything to do with it. And it's normal for us. It's day-to-day living for us. And I think part of that is that we have to appreciate that the rest of the world can't understand it how we understand it because we've grown up with it. Mm-hmm. And I think as Sequoia had said, we're at that table and we can now contribute from our point of view and our perception, our framework and our perspectives on DEI because it's so completely different to how the rest of the world experiences it. So
I totally shared that experience when I moved to the States, and you kind of see how they perceive differences feeds into some of the DEI issues that they have over there. Right. Meanwhile, yes, we're not saying that Trinidad or the Caribbean are perfect. Obviously, we do have work to do when it comes to our policies, our laws, etc. But I do think that we've kind of had a very successful melting pot, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm going to leave you on that note. We're going to make sure that you're all set up here. And with no further ado, thank you so much, Deborah. We look forward to your talk.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Maria. All right. You guys can see the entire screen there?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So what I would like to do today is, from the backdrop of Caribbean women in oil and gas, talk a little bit about navigating the opportunities in the Caribbean. And this is a typical picture that you will not see anywhere. So that's why I had to create it out of AI because, you don't see a woman climbing a tank typically in any kind of literature anywhere. So I hope we can appreciate the fact that more and more it's becoming a fact of life that women are becoming involved in this industry, in this sector. And even more so, I am so excited to be a Caribbean woman in oil and gas at this point in time in our region because it is exploding. And the focus of the globe is on this part of the world now. And I think more than ever, women have an opportunity in this region to make a name for themselves and to be part of the decision-making going forward, not only for our region, but to affect internationally what happens out there in this industry. So essentially, Caribbean companies are leveraging women in positions of leadership and technical roles, making women integral to energy operations. And why is that? Because women get things done, right? We're not a talk shop. We don't sit down and have a ton of meetings and then, it goes away. We actually are very good at executing what we do. And that is why our gender is actually becoming a lot more integral to the strategic positions within companies. And then, as I mentioned, our Caribbean region is quickly becoming a leader when it comes to hiring and retaining female employees in this field, women working at the executive level. It took me many, 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 many years to climb the ladder and get where I am. And I mean, Maria, you spoke about the bio, but it took a lot of work to get there to develop that. And I have followed in the trail of some other, trailblazing women in the Caribbean that have achieved that status. I mean, I could just mention a couple off the bat, like Arlene Chow, who is the CEO of Heritage, Patricia King, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Heritage Petroleum, and many others. Giselle Thompson, who is one of the vice presidents at BPTT, that's BP Trinidad and Tobago. And there are many other ladies in the technical field, engineering field that work offshore and so forth. And slowly but surely, we are finding our way and making our imprints felt in this industry, right? In terms of research and development initiatives, women are becoming involved in a lot of the background side of the work, doing a lot of the development behind exploration and so forth. We are in positions where we engage with the government on energy policy formation. And we also, as I mentioned, provide technical roles in upstream exploration, production, downstream refining and distribution. Women's unique perspectives on the energy industry bring expertise and insight that drive solutions and create new opportunities in a region that needs them. When I said it's a great time, an exciting time to be a Caribbean woman in oil and gas, this is what I mean. I just want to give a quick rundown of what has been come to known as the prolific Guyana-Suriname oil basin. And if you take a look at the screen, this will give you an idea of what's happening in our Southern Caribbean region right now. So on the left of the screen, you will see Guyana, and that's the area that all of the international companies are going after very, very strongly and doing exploration and drilling. And then on the right side of the screen, that's Suriname. That's very up and coming and becoming just as hot as Guyana, as the two countries are in the same basin, all right? So as you can see, it's very active with a lot of the international oil majors there. And that's just a glimpse of what's happening in our region in this part of the world. So many of you will recognize a lot of these names. ExxonMobil, of course, is always in the news. I think last week, Friday, again, there was another fine that was announced. So it's just coming more and more and more. Since 2015, 2016, it hasn't stopped. And it's been extremely successful. And with social media and the way, just the way media works now, with its instant ability to get news out there, the globe is now focused on this little part of the world that never really attracted any attention before. So all of these big names are here. And this is where we have an opportunity as women and as Caribbean women to put our mark in this industry. This is a little hard to read, but I just wanted to give a background for those who are not in the industry and just give you an idea of what the successes have been in this basin. So essentially, Exxon is the current main operator of the offshore deepwater blocks in Guyana. And the exploration that is currently going on in these blocks of Starbrook, Kanye, and Kaieteur blocks. The Starbrook block, which is the main block that has had all the successful discoveries, is a 6.6 million acre block, and thus far has yielded a find that is estimated at 10 billion barrels of oil. Exxon indicates that there will be 6 FPSOs in the block by 2027. I know the third one has just come on stream. Prosperity is just down there, and we have a couple of people that are working on that FPSO. And the phases that have been in activity for the last few years have been Eliza Phase 1 and Phase 2 developments, which currently produce 130,000 barrels per day for Liza Phase 1 and 220,000 barrels of oil per day in Liza Phase 2. These are supported by the 2 FPSOs, the first 2, which are Liza Destiny and Liza Unity. The Payara development will produce 220,000 barrels of oil per day, and that's supported by the FPSO Prosperity, and that one has just come into the region and will begin its operations soon. And the next area up for development is Yellowtail, and that will produce 220,000 barrels of oil per day, supported by the 4th FPSO, One Guyana, which has recently been named. I think we saw a lot of pictures of the president and his wife naming that FPSO. And the next development up after that is Uaru Development that has recently received approval. And those developments will produce 1.2 million barrels of oil per day, supported by the fifth FPSO, the Area Witu, right? And that's Guyana. In Suriname, Total Energies is the major player there. They have 50% working interest and operatorship in the Block 58, which is the prolific block offshore Suriname with their partner Apache. There was a lot of successful gas discovery in the Krabdagu 1 well offshore in Suriname. And these were followed by discoveries at Maka, Sapakara, Kwasakwaisi, and Keskesi. And it's approximately 20 million barrels of commercially viable oil since its discovery in February 2023, which is earlier this year. Morgan Stanley has appraised it at approximately 6.5 billion barrels of commercial product in Block 58. There are other partners in Suriname that will begin activity shortly. Chevron, Petronas, Apache, and Shell, which are the other oil majors which have working interests in the other blocks in Suriname. And of course, this exploration activity is going to increase late 2023 into 2024. And before I go into some of the other information on this, I don't want to leave out the rest of our Caribbean countries that have entered into this industry. So Barbados has also entered into the exploration market, and this is Barbados on the left here that is showing the blocks offshore. Barbados is on the left, and they have basically put these blocks offshore out for bid rounds, and the bidding process for licenses began in 2022, and licenses have been granted to some of the oil majors already. So we are keeping a watch on Barbados to see what develops from this and if they will be the next successful player in this industry to come from our region. And then on the right side of the screen, you will see Jamaica. And in 2022, Jamaica issued an exploration license to United Oil and Gas, which is a company out of the UK. And that license covers the southern part offshore of Jamaica, 22,400 square kilometers. And there's been so far a commercial appraisal of approximately 2.4 billion barrels of prospect product that has been mapped so far. So again, two countries to keep our eyes on in the region for potentially successful developments in the near future. And of course, we cannot forget my own home country, Trinidad. You know, I mean, we're not facing a lot of media activity now with all the prolific news that's coming out of Guyana and Suriname, but we're still here. And Trinidad remains the most mature oil and gas market in the Caribbean, having been exploring, producing, and exporting oil for the last 100 years. So the oil majors are familiar with our markets, and onshore and offshore drilling and production continues with the likes of BPTT, Woodside, Perenco, EOG, Touchstone, and many others that have resident and large operations in our country. So onward to today's topic now. With all this information about what's happening in our region, how do we embrace the opportunities that are available to us in the Caribbean in this industry, and of course as women, all right? So some of the overview that I'll give are the sectors where we believe that a lot of focus can be put to give opportunity to women in this sector. There has been created a great demand for highly skilled labor in this industry. And while there exists some labor which traditionally has been imported by the international companies, with the introduction of specific local content legislation that is supporting the hiring of our nationals, our Caribbean nationals, the time is now for us as women to put ourselves at the forefront of these opportunities. And I mean, at the end of the day, that is what gives us a platform to progress ourselves. And I want to, give a shout out to the governments that have put these local content legislations in place, because that is what will guarantee that our local nationals whether local to the country or local to our CARICOM, Caribbean area, to allow us the opportunity to excel in this type of industry, which has traditionally been, taken up by a lot of the international labor partners. So some of these opportunities will include, and I have on the screen pictures of heavy trucks and so forth. But to be honest, this industry is not a pretty industry, right? There's a lot of very heavy labor that goes into it, and once you're able to embrace that kind of operation, there is a lot of potential in it. So the initial thing that I think we need to look at is creating business for ourselves, and as business owners, we have the opportunity to create a lot of these small niche businesses to support the sector. So the sector relies on a lot of heavy equipment operation. In this particular case, the first one would be heavy equipment operators and lifting specialists. So if you have the ability to own your fleet of trucks and to make sure that they're certified to the standards required by the oil majors, you can set yourself up in your company, list yourself on their system as a vendor, and be able to receive bids and RFPs that you can put in your proposal, and ultimately be able to win business from these oil companies, because that's the structure they operate under. And of course, because of the legislation, it's driving the fact that they have to use local companies. So now is the time, if you want to be a business owner and be able to have this industry as a customer, the time is now. You can do it. Set yourself up, become registered as a vendor, having all the criteria that they're required to meet for their particular services, and go for it, right? Anything in that heavy equipment sector as well. So it can be forklifts, cranes, tractor trailer trucks, those kinds of things, and any of the supporting industries that go with that sector. So mechanics, lubricating oil, hydraulic oil, tires, everything that is required to keep those types of equipment running. Though there are so many other small spin-off sectors to support the heavy equipment industry. Lifting specialists is another industry, because everything offshore is transported by vessel, and it has to get on the vessel and off the vessel and onto the platform and off the platform and back onto onshore. And that requires a lot of specialist training and specialist lifting, provided by special types of cranes that can be weight rated at a certain level and that sort of a thing. And it requires also a special technical training to be able to operate and know how to lift these things. Everything from the long, large pipes that they would be using into drilling, to everything that is required for the life aboard an FPSO or a drilling rig, in terms of televisions, a treadmill, food for the staff on board the platforms, and those types of things. So all the support services that go along with that as well. And then, of course, the helicopter industry, which is starting to get back some activity now. There was a lot of activity in Trinidad with it, and that's now expanded to Guyana and Suriname, because again, that's the way that you get onshore. That's the way that you get offshore from onshore. So the helicopter transports, transporting crews and staff and so forth to the platforms to pick up their shifts, and all the support services that go around that: fueling, catering, the services for check-in and check-off. All those are smaller businesses that go with supporting this type of area. And then we have port and marine warehousing personnel. So of course, anywhere that you're dealing with vessels, you will have a requirement for a port. You will have a requirement for personnel operating on a port, and that's everything from customs, brokerage, stevedores, the marine crew operating the vessels. And of course, on the port, you would have a requirement for warehousing personnel. All right. So if you're building warehouses, operating inside the warehouses and doing material management and that sort of a thing, all those are other segments that support the port and marine service for the supply vessels that service the offshore platforms. There is also going to be a need for HSSE specialists, because this is an industry that carries a very high requirement for safety, and therefore the training of our people to perform and ensure that all the various sectors and industries comply with the HSSE requirements is also an area that you can excel in, whether you start a company in it or you pursue a career in that industry. We will also have a requirement for engineers and automating technicians. We'll have a requirement for helicopter crews, for medical and medevac crews and capabilities. And that's everything to do with medevacing out, doctors, nurses, medical personnel, EMS, emergency services, ambulances, and all the other support services that go with that. We will also require schools, technical schools, to be able to train the people that are required to support this industry, all right? Because at the end of the day, we have to have a pipeline. If we want to have our people employed in this industry, we have to be able to train them. Where does the training come from? So we have to develop the technical schools that can give diplomas in oil and gas, for drilling and production operators, material coordinators, onshore and offshore programs, logistics coordinators, certification in oil and gas systems and software, because the industry has its own systems and software that it works with. And our people will need to be trained in those types of areas. And new technologies in AI. So long gone are the old days when, there were all these clunky set of equipment and so on. A lot of the technology has become very light, very lean, and very advanced. So, and that is what a lot of these major oil companies are taking advantage of now. So when our young people come out, it's also that they learn what is the newest technology that they will be working with. So we have to be prepared to make sure that they stay current with what is being required in the industry. All right. Other opportunities don't only just relate to upstream, and upstream meaning the offshore drilling and exploration. We also have opportunities midstream and downstream. So there's talk about a lot of different refineries and refining capability that is being discussed. For example, Guyana is talking now about building their own refinery, around 30,000 barrels per day, to support their industry. Right? There's a lot of work that goes into that. And while, yes, there may be some international company involved in the construction, there is going to be a requirement for the local construction sector and local businesses to support this type of project going forward. There's also talk of LNG facilities being constructed in Suriname. Again, similarly, it may have an international company leading the project, but it will require local support for execution, local construction, local services, local transport, local labor. All right. And this is where that once we stay on the pulse of what's happening, we can plug in and make sure that we're there and part of what's happening. And then, of course, other alternative energy products that are being considered in the region for solar, for wind, for hydro, for geothermal, and of course, for the new talk that's happening now for carbon capture. Right? These are all projects that will ultimately come to the region. And we have an opportunity, if we are not the businesses that are leading these projects, the businesses and the people that are supporting these projects going forward. So again, it's to stay up to date on the technology, stay plugged in as to what's happening, and find a way to make sure that we are involved in making these projects and helping the successful execution of these projects in our region. And before I go to sustainability, I also wanted to mention from the downstream sector, and downstream refers to things like gas stations and so forth. There's been a lot of movement in the industry, in the retail service station sector, with new companies coming in, with rebranding going on as continued investment takes place in our different Caribbean islands. And just a fun, interesting fact that the most successful service stations are actually ones run by female dealers. And I don't think I have to say a lot about why that is. All right. So again, that's another opportunity that our Caribbean women could pursue, because being a dealer of a gas station is like running your own business as well. All right. And there's a reason why women are more successful at that type of operation and give a more successful operation as a dealer. So coming to the end of my presentation now, outside of the hardcore oil and gas opportunities, there are other segments that I just wanted to draw our attention to. And sustainability, of course, is a big one. That's a huge buzzword that everybody's hearing now for the last couple of years. But just a little key information behind it, in that sustainability and the reduction of carbon footprint is a key metric that is driving the major global corporations. It is becoming increasingly important for companies to demonstrate strategic plans supported by clear execution on managing its social and environmental impact. And I say this to say that what is happening now is that that's a whole new segment of opportunity that women can become involved in, because now we're looking for sustainability managers, sustainability strategy experts. And that type of opportunity is now presenting itself. And as the industry is growing in this region, if we stay on top of the technology, if we stay on top of driving sustainability practices, it is an area that we can forge our footprint in. And then the other buzzword behind that, as Sequoia started us off with today, is progressing ED&I, or DEI, equality, diversity, and inclusion. So while the Caribbean region is home, as I said earlier when I started, to the definition of equality, diversity, and inclusion with our varied cultures, religions, and mixes and races, any business that wants to commit to being an employer who takes ED&I seriously has to be prepared to embrace a workplace culture and commit to a long-term commitment of promoting equality, diversity, and inclusion in the workplace. These are avenues that I encourage Caribbean women to embrace and seek out the opportunities available to corporations and companies as they slowly embrace the strategic implementation of these key shareholder metrics. And in conclusion, again, the Caribbean is setting an excellent example for other countries around the world when it comes to getting more females involved in oil and gas operations. By embracing them, Caribbean countries are positioning themselves as global leaders in the empowerment of women in action, and it is inspiring a new generation of women to become involved in the energy sector. And without a doubt, we will play an integral role in advancing the development of alternative energy development in the Caribbean region. From where I sit, earning a seat at the executive level is no easy feat. And as we all know, we have to work thrice as hard as our male counterparts, and even more so as Caribbean women. So let us ensure that we don't just simply satisfy a quota for gender and diversity, but that we lead and influence using equalities that are unique to us as women. And that's my presentation for today. I'm happy to take any questions or hear any comments that anybody might have. Maria, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Deborah. That was amazing. I think for me, very early on in my career, we had some oil and gas clients on the architectural visualization part side of things, and Flip Deco was one of our clients, and that was my first time like really understanding this entire world that was happening down south, and of course in parts of the north that, you know, most people don't even understand how busy or the amount of money going in and out of that industry. I know even in a conversation today we were talking about the fact that Trinidadians are spoiled, right? Because we have such a booming energy industry that is really cushioning our fall from a lot of different things. So, you know, I really want to thank you for giving us that insight. I myself, as a recent entering the market as an entrepreneur in DEI, I'm definitely going to take your advice. I do think that there's a huge market opportunity now with DEI, and belonging, which is the B part of it, becoming more of a workplace requirement with these larger industries. So it is very inspiring to hear from someone within the industry that is a woman that is seeing the culture shift, because you don't really hear about that. I mean, I think this is the first time I'm hearing about a culture shift with regards to DEI in the oil industry. So from that perspective, it is a very unique talk. Um, I- do you have any advice for I suppose we have quite a lot of young female ambassadors that work in STEM, right? How do they? What opportunities are there when it comes to getting into the industry that you might be aware of already, or that you know that it's in the pipeline is coming out?
Yeah. So again, stay on top of it. If you are interested, I mean, where the oil is happening is where it's happening. It's Guyana, it's Suriname, it's Trinidad, hopefully Barbados and Jamaica in time to come. So stay plugged in. Google these companies, get on board their LinkedIn pages, work with the recruitment agencies that tend to funnel the pipelines to these companies. So, some of the larger recruitment companies like Eve Anderson, like some of it is slipping me, Regency Recruitment,
Mhm.
El Dorado. These are the companies that support specifically the oil and gas industry. So get on board with those companies, lodge your resumes with those companies. If you can, make some direct connection with them, stay on top of their social media so that you see when any opportunities are published that you can apply for, and just get your CVs into these companies early and keep in touch with them. If you don't hear from them for 6 months and so forth, send it back in and say, I haven't heard anything, just want to make sure you guys still have me on the radar for this or anything else. And then even some of the companies directly, because the oil majors sometimes recruit directly. So again, stay on top of their pages, their career opportunity sites and those sort of things. Lodge your resumes directly with them. And it's not just the oil companies like the Shells and the Woodsides and the BPTTs. It's also the service companies that support them. So Asco Logistics, for example, is one. Halliburton, Schlumberger, all of these companies that require engineers and technicians and so forth. So do your research as a woman. That's one of the things that we do very well. We do our research, and it's literally just plotting your way and being consistent and keeping at it and forging a way for yourself. It doesn't happen overnight and it doesn't happen easily, but if you plug away at it, it is going to happen.
I 100% agree with that, that it takes a great deal of persistence. I mean, something that you said that resonated in a big way is that we do have to work thrice as hard. Women, especially women from multi-diverse backgrounds, especially women of mixed race, I feel sometimes also have a lot of different challenges that other groups don't have. So,
And as a Caribbean woman, Maria, I can say we also face the challenge because many of us are single mothers, and I'm a
oh,
single mom.
that's something for us
So
to
I
talk
think
about.
we have that experience as well, more so than a lot of the rest of the world. And we also have to have that function and be able to still work thrice as hard and raise our single kid or kids, and still forge our way. So for all those ladies out there that think it's not possible or there's too much on your plate, just
You
keep
can
going
get it.
at it. There's a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of stress, but you can forge your way and get there. And mine is almost 17, so you know.
Well, that's amazing. Congratulations on I told my brother congratulations the other day. He's like, why am I being congratulated when his daughter graduated? And I told him because that is also your success that you got her there. So, any last words of advice as a woman who has broken through the barriers that you have, that has faced the challenges that you have, like in what you just told us about, that you really feel that young women or even women now entering the field, I'm pretty sure a lot of people have taken notes. They're like, okay, I'm going to look into this. No, because I do think, before I get into our last request from you, because I think we have a little bit of time before our next speaker, because it's a huge opportunity, this conversation. So I'm going to hold you as long as you might allow us to hold you. But something that keeps coming up in the innovation space amongst women leaders has been something that we're referring to as financial trauma, right? Which means like women, I feel sometimes shy away from high profit fields, or if they do work in high profit fields, they keep it very quiet, So, there is I'm not saying there's shame around, but it's almost like we're not very good at asking for what we think we deserve.
Correct. Correct.
And, I was wondering, what's your take on that? Because even in the consideration of the energy field, I'm hearing not even the imposter syndrome. I'm like, I believe that I can create a DEI business that would positively impact the energy industry, especially with the background that I'm developing in community impact, right? But there's a little voice in my head being like, is that for you? Like, do you think you would succeed at that? Are you ready for that? And I think that's what holds a lot of women back. I think that's why a lot of us don't really reach
Yeah.
some of the goals that we're going after until
Correct.
way after our 40s, because we've had to lose a lot of things from holding back. So, any advice for women around that topic? I do have one question from the audience afterwards.
Sure.
And then, yeah, thank you so much, Deborah, for any response to that question, because I'm telling you, in my circles, and I would love for us to meet you in person. We're hoping to have a meetup after all of this with senior women in the industry, um, really to talk about these things face to face, to kind of give that mentorship presence, to nurturing those women rising up, you know,
Yeah.
in your trail. So yeah, any
So
advice?
I have to say, Maria, I mean, I had good women mentors as well. And that's one thing early in my career, because I grew up with a single mom as well. Um, and it wasn't easy. The imposter syndrome is a real thing. And I think that because I had strong women mentors that would say to me, you can do this, don't worry about what anybody else says. I think one of the first things I faced in my industry is that I was not an engineer. How are you in an oil and gas industry and you're leading companies and you're not an engineer? Well, because I'm in the operations and I'm into the business of running the company. So we hire engineers and we hire technical people and we listen to them. And we have to understand that they're there for a reason and we take the advice when we need it from them. Right? So the imposter syndrome is real. The financial impact of women in this industry, and I think globally, is real. The facts are there. Whilst our gender is becoming more and more incorporated at the executive level, we're still underpaid, compared to our male counterparts. That is a fact. And it's changing, but it's changing very slowly. And I think traditionally we've grown up as, especially in the Caribbean as well. You take any opportunity that comes along because they are so few and far between. So you don't argue and you don't make a big noise about it, and you accept the first offer that's put on the table. So you really have to be able to train yourself and get that confidence where you reach a level to say, not that, well, I'm not doing the work unless you pay me X, but it's more of a conversation where I think I need to let you know how much value that I bring to you and that you will remunerate me according to that value that I'm allowing you to see that I'm going to bring to you
Yeah.
and your company. So it is a conversation that has to be had. It's a confidence conversation that we have to have with ourselves as young women. And don't be afraid to do it. And then, as you yourself striving out there in your own business, at the end of the day, successful business owners aren't the ones that just go out there and say, I'm going to do this and it's going to get done. No, it's the ones that have a plan. It's the ones that do their research and stick to their plan. It's the ones that pivot when you see it's not going the direction that you originally anticipated, but you can pivot to make sure you capture the opportunities that come up in a different way, and that you study and you do the research behind what it is you're going to do. You mind the sector of the industry that you want to get involved in. So DE&I example for yourself, as you know, I've said it today, is now a key metric on many international companies' shareholder metrics, and the boards of these companies are required now to say, okay, they need to have a DE&I manager. They need to have a strategic and diversity officer. They need to have a sustainability officer. And these are real roles that are being created in many companies, not just oil and gas. Many companies around the world, manufacturing companies, transport companies, all need to have these types of roles filled within these companies. So um, if you are creating a business where you are going into an advisory role of these companies, right? Those are also opportunities, and you would need to know who are on the cusp of creating these positions and where they are and what is the message you want them to hear to show that you are now going to add value that translates into successful key metrics for them that they can now report to their shareholders and their board. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's what's in it for me, right? So if you can show them that I am going to solve your problem of ED&I, of sustainability, of you know, reducing your carbon footprint, of training your people to become more aware of sustainability, things like that, right? And you show them how you can add that value, that's what's going to work for you. And anybody else that wants to get into this sector or strive their way into another sector. It's all hard work, it's all focus, it's all planning. And those are things that we as women are really good at.
I think I speak for all of us here with that this has been a very eye-opening discussion. Your talk was very eye-opening. I definitely see us following up with you afterwards. We're planning to do a continued content series, which means that it's not just a summit. We're hoping to create content that has a variety of impact. So we will be reaching out to you for a follow-up article on what we've been talking about here, and also do a feature on what you do at your job, which sounds very exciting. And even in technology, it's so funny because we have Natalia from Google coming up next, and her role is in AI, but she's talking about some of the soft skills and experiences that we have as women that really plays a huge part in us understanding the environment, us facing the environment, facing ourselves, challenging ourselves. I loved how you described it as a confidence challenge.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And so one of our biggest programs is the I'm Remarkable program. And what it does is that it teaches people self-promotion, right? And it's actually from the I'm Remarkable program that we started this summit, because it was myself and LaShawn Ramden, and we had both done training, and we were like, let's just take it to another level where we give women a platform to share their experience, but we're also challenging them to tell their story, because it's very uncommon, I think, with any tech landscape for us to just want to hear people's stories. We always want to, what's the new thing? What's the new technology? What's the new system? What's the new software? But now it's really about, what is your experience as a woman been in technology? And we actually want to hear that, because, and your story is very inspiring because it's a very positive one. Not saying that you haven't had challenges, but I do think it's important for us to hear the success stories as well, because it gives us hope, it gives us energy, it gives us,
and it helps to give back. It helps to give back as well, because I had people helping me along the way, telling me of their struggles and how they got through it. And I think that helps any up and coming woman in this industry. And it helps to give back. So one of the other speakers, Anushka Sonai out of Suriname, I mean, she's giving back. She's gotten there, she's giving back. And that is what supports us in this region and in our agenda, when we can come together like this, like these fantastic platforms that you put on, to allow us to also give back and share and expand. And that's how we will all grow together as a female community and in this region.
Agreed. We're very excited we do hope to meet you soon in person, and of course, take this conversation further. Thank you so much, Deborah, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Maria. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Bye. Thank you so much. Wow. It's so funny because small and medium business development has been a big topic here in the Caribbean, especially during COVID, where we had so many innovations and so many businesses that got started around service provision, around she described a lot of areas of support services. Very often in the tech industry, if it's not about tech, we don't and when I say tech, I mean if it's not about the technology, we don't always hear about the environment around how people are building successful, financial, profitable businesses. And I do think in the Caribbean, we have a tendency to keep these things secret. In the United States, one of the things I found that was most different was that people actually reported their success on a much bigger level. So if your company made like millions more than it did last year, it wasn't a secret. It was something that people really advertise. In a small medium, I would even say to large enterprises, unless you're like a multi-stakeholder industry or multi-stakeholder conglomerate, you really don't hear about people reporting their wins. And hence, it's very secretive here in the Caribbean. Part of the reason I was talking about financial trauma earlier is we have a very unhealthy relationship with profit and massive profit here in the Caribbean, and probably in the world, given a lot of the negative things that we've seen that are attached to massive profit. I do think that as women, we do need to heal our relationship when it comes to money. We need to heal our relationship when it comes to being financially successful, and change our approach when it comes to asking for what we deserve, who we choose to help, how we choose to help them, and of course, making sure that we have beneficial, healthy relationships all around. Putting my little mental health hat on. So, with no further ado, we're going to welcome on to the stage our next speaker, who is, excuse me one second. Now, I got so excited when I saw Natalia's bio because initially we weren't sure if we had secured her, and I was like, "Did we get her?" And so I was like, "Yeah, we got her." And I was like, "Okay." And the reason for that is because her background is in AI, and AI is just like this huge, huge topic right now. And I thought, it was an opportunity for us to talk about. What I love about Natalia's talk is that it doesn't really, I don't know if it has much to do with AI at all. It's about women supporting women for best practices for supporting women, colleagues of color. And that's really what this summit is all about. This summit is really about giving women in all different fields of technology, whether you are a startup founder, whether you are a global lead in AI for Google. Like we really want to give women the opportunity to tell their stories and to share the experiences that they think are really important. So let me get into introducing our next speaker, who is Natalia Concepcion. She is the generative AI policy lead for Google. And her topic today will be Women Supporting Women. Perfect segue from our last talk. Best practices for supporting colleagues of color. And all of these topics are really connected. They're very much connected from the perspective of what needs to be done in this particular landscape that we're in. So I'm going to get into Natalia's bio now. There we go. So Natalia is the generative AI policy lead at Google. I'm definitely looking to ask a little bit more into what that is. Working to make the next wave of artificial intelligence trustworthy and safe. Before Google, Natalia worked in ads at Meta and strategy at Liberty Mutual Insurance. Wow. As a queer Latina, she has a passion for discussing issues on diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Based in Chicago, in her free time, she loves hosting game nights, reading the latest mystery novel, and binging reality TV. Oh my goodness. I have so many questions already as to what it is she's watching because I also have a reality TV problem, and it's very serious. I think I might need some help. So very nice to meet you, Natalia. I have like a few initial questions before you dive into your talk, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what it means to be an AI generative policy lead. What does that mean?
So I work on a trust and safety team writing policy. So basically trying to advocate for user safety and building trust alongside our product teams for different generative AI. I previously worked on our Google Assistant product too. So basically helping advise the product teams to make sure that we're creating products that are safe for our users.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, because I think I was imagining all kinds of things because I'm not a AI professional. And I was like, that could mean so many things, really. I also want to applaud you as a mental health advocate for including in your bio your identity as queer. I am also queer, and you really don't see it very often. I think you've inspired me to include it in my bio because I'm noticing that it's actually a great advocacy tool if you include it. So thank you for that.
Of course.
So are you ready to give us a talk today on?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to give you the stage. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm really excited. So this is my first time using this system, so I think I will just need confirmation that you can see my slides.
Yes, we can see it. It's
Okay,
perfect.
Great. All right, thank you so much. So as was mentioned, my name is Natalia Concepcion, and I'm really excited to be talking about something I'm very passionate about, which is women supporting women. But more specifically, I want to talk about some best practices for supporting your colleagues of color, which can include yourself. So with that in mind, let's start jumping into it. So a little bit about me. As I mentioned, I work at Google. I am based in Chicago, although I've spent time all over the US and outside of the US. I am Puerto Rican and the first generation to grow up here in the US. I love reading, as was mentioned in my bio, The Perfect Find. That's the book I'm currently reading, although it's not a mystery. It's still really good. I have a dog and very into game night right now. But the reason I'm here is because I'm passionate about issues affecting women of all backgrounds. However, I understand there's limits to my own experience. And so I'm going to be really honest and vulnerable with everyone today and share about my own personal experience, what I've learned. These are my views. And I want to acknowledge some of the limits of my perspective. So I have only worked in the US. I've only worked at larger companies, and for the majority of my career, I have been tech focused. So that's what is driving a lot of what I'll be sharing today. So why should you care? Why is this important? Like I said, I really want to save you time. I wish someone would have been honest with me at the beginning of my career about what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about what's within your control, what's outside of your control, where to focus your energy, your work, and where to push really hard. And also what's outside of your control. You're operating within a system that wasn't made for you, especially if you're working in tech, especially if you're working in the US. So what's within control and what's out of your control. But ultimately, I want to save you time. I want to save you energy. I want to teach you some of the things that I have learned in my career that I wish I would have known sooner. So with that in mind, let's talk about a couple things I've heard a lot, either directly or indirectly at different points in my career. So the first one, women should lean in to succeed. I have heard this a lot. A prestigious education will guarantee career success. This I've heard in different forums. I remember when I started out in tech, and I was having trouble acclimating to the culture, someone told me, maybe I should have gone to an Ivy and I would have an easier time adjusting like the rest of my peers. Women of color should be more ambitious. Wild that we still hear things like this today. These are things, there's some truth in each of these, but I think a lot of these are said in a way that puts a lot of responsibility and pressure on women of color and blame too for why we don't represent high levels of leadership in tech or in really any industry. And that's not true. There's a balance to each of these. So let's go into each one a little bit further. So women should lean in to succeed. That's true to a degree, but also a McKinsey study shows that women of color are less likely to have bosses who promote their work contributions to others, help them navigate really complex organizational politics, or socialize with them outside of work. All of those things are also major contributors to success. The next one, a prestigious education will guarantee career success. Well, that's not always true for us. The Harvard Business Review reports that only 13% of the Black women who earned their MBAs at one of the most prestigious institutions in the world, Harvard Business School, only 13% of them achieved high-ranking executive positions, which is less than their Black peers, Black men and non-Black men. Then this last one, women of color should be more ambitious. Nielsen reports that more women of color have goals to make it to the top of their profession or to be promoted. We are ambitious. We're actually more ambitious compared to white women or any category of men. So with these things in mind, start to think about what is within your control and outside of your control. So what is your responsibility? I think there's a lot of freedom and power in understanding that you're trying to succeed in a system that wasn't made for you to succeed. So you need to take responsibility for what's within your control, what you can do, which is helping and supporting others and yourself, but also acknowledging the limits of that, I think is actually really freeing and something I wish I had known and accepted earlier. So these are 3 things that I think can help both you and those around you. So let's start with educate yourself. So there's a couple things here, but the key is educate yourself. So one of the important points here is that as women of color, it is not your responsibility to educate others on things like microaggressions, context, history of oppression. Placing that responsibility on underrepresented groups adds an additional burden on top of your existing work and existing obstacles. And that's very unfair and ultimately reinforces that same system. So I strongly believe it's not your responsibility to educate others, but it is your responsibility to educate yourself. As was mentioned in the bio, I'm Latina. I'm also bisexual. I like to think that I can understand a lot of different experiences, but the truth is I don't understand all of them, and I have to educate myself too. One of them, like the speaker who was before me, motherhood. That's something, I'm not a mom, so I don't understand being a mom in the workplace. That's something I've had to learn about what the challenges are and how I can best support moms and parents at work. I was born in the US, I work in the US. Immigration, that's not an experience I've had. That's one I have to educate myself on. But again, that's within my control, and that's something that I want to do to best support those around me. Listen and affirm. There's a lot here. We talk about listening all the time, but I think good listening and active listening are actually less common than we think. One experience I've had a lot, and I know my peers have had a lot too, is when you're vulnerable with someone, especially in a non-minority group, about something that just feels off or like doesn't feel right, and they feel the need to share their own experience, bringing the attention back to them. I think when people, especially women, are being open about an experience they're having, it's really important to affirm them, listen to them, believe them. When I think early on in my career, I remember I didn't know like how to identify microaggressions. I just knew when stuff like felt off. I remember I was working really hard on a huge project, and my male coworker helped me with 2 or 3 parts of like a major project. After it launched, that male coworker got a cash bonus and recognition for leading my project. At the time, I was young, I was inexperienced. I was like, they did a lot, they helped me, maybe like, but it just feels like off. And I remember talking to one of my women coworkers and her immediately calling it out and saying, no, that's messed up. That should not have happened. Naming it, affirming me. That was so empowering and really the first step towards growth and also changing that system, is knowing you're not crazy. You're not imagining things. You're not making things up. Those conversations are so, so important. So think about ways that you can be that person to someone else. The last one is amplify. So this one we talk about a lot too. I think as women, we're heard, to advocate for yourself, be ambitious, be hardworking. Those are really important things, but I also think we don't get enough credit for the fact we are ambitious. We are hardworking. I learned that at home. We learned about self-promotion from each other. We know how to do these things. We don't get enough credit for it. And I think the other part of this is, when we're self-promoting, sometimes it's not taken the same way as if a man is self-promoting or a white peer is promoting. So I think those are important pieces to keep in mind. These are small parts of a bigger problem. And oftentimes us self-promoting isn't enough. So one of the things I like to remind myself to do is, how can I amplify, share, and celebrate accomplishments of the women of color around me? Before this presentation, my friend Marta was bringing up how her and a group have goals to share in meetings, like about each other's work. Like, I just came from this meeting, this person's doing something amazing. It was really, really great. Someone else told me about how every week they have a calendar invite to remind themselves to send out a kudos or like a thank you at the end of the week. This can take so many different forms, everything from just a simple thank you to really celebrating someone. So I think this is one we can all think about, like, how can I build this into my routine? How can I do this more often? Because your voice is important, and I feel like this is definitely a way other people can lift each other up. I went through a lot really quickly, but these are the things I'm hoping you take away from what I've shared today. You're trying to succeed in a broken system, and you're going to see people around you succeed at different rates, maybe be rewarded in different ways, and you're not responsible for that. But what you can take responsibility for is what's within your control, which is educating yourself on the issues that you don't understand, listen and affirming and amplifying others. So I would love to continue this conversation with you. I've put my personal email and my LinkedIn on this slide. It's kind of small, but it's natalia.m.concepcion@gmail.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn. I would love to hear your thoughts or comments and continue the conversation, like I said. And I also want to take a moment to thank the organizers for having me. I'm really, really happy to be sharing about something so close and important to me. So I really appreciate the time. And then I think we have like some time for questions and comments too. So I would love to chat.
Thank you so much, Natalia. That was amazing. Especially as I was telling Deborah just now, I myself am looking at getting into DEI as a field. So I'm actually really interested in, I love the moments that you shared. Thank you for being so vulnerable with us. I know from what I'm being trained in that storytelling, I really do believe is like the key to all DEI work. So what you did today was really powerful. Glad that we were here for it. Could you tell us a little bit about, you mentioned some of those moments where, people interjected or they spoke up for you, or they sort of like, they did those necessary things to kind of challenge that bystander syndrome. People educating themselves and not putting the burden on the person. That also helped. It also connects with mental health work as well, So I myself am a person living with PTSD. I'm a queer woman of color, all of these different things. And what happens with that is that the burden is on you to explain your identity, explain what your needs are. Even in the workplace, I think at my last job, the Office of the Parliament, I had a really fantastic experience when the HR department actually researched PTSD without me telling them anything.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they were like, Maria, we looked this up. We get it. We understand what's happening now, because they couldn't understand it. We had a very serious earthquake here in Trinidad and Tobago. And something that nobody tells you when you do PTSD treatment or you do trauma treatment is that in the event of a natural disaster, like an earthquake, you may need to redo all of your therapy.
Yep.
So it was affecting like my ability to stay in the office. Very often my boss didn't know where I was. And I actually had to do therapy to get, I don't even think I ever properly entirely healed from it until we left that building and we moved back into the Red House. Our Red House is like the White House over there. But like we don't really have it's a little bit confusing, but because it was a different space, I was like, and we're closer to the ground, this is perfect. I felt so much more energized. But I do want to know, what was your experience afterwards? Because from my experience that I had, I do feel like sometimes there's a rubber band effect. So like people lean into the advice, they lean into the compassion, but then the system pulls them back. So the system is like, well, we can't lean into that entirely. We have to have limits. Even with my family, I feel like I'm talking more than asking a question. But
no, this is great. Thank you for sharing this.
No, of course. It's always important when you meet another lived experience expert, let's have a sesh, right? So for me, I feel that one of the things that really started happening a lot was understanding my role in it, and I was taking so much responsibility. That's why when you said educate yourself, I really felt for that. But I also feel even within my family, I'm surrounded by Capricorns. That won't mean to anybody. It won't mean anything to anybody who doesn't believe in numerology and horoscopes, but it does mean I'm surrounded by a lot of serious thinkers, right?
Mhm. So
So, and I'm Pisces. I'm also
I'm
like,
a Libra.
oh, so you know exactly what I'm talking about,
Yes.
right? So, they don't really understand why someone would cyclically make mistakes.
Mhm.
Like for them, they're like, why does this problem keep happening?
Mhm.
And I think when they can't understand it, they put like a little whatever label it is they can put on it that makes sense,
Yeah.
and then they compartmentalize it because
Mhm.
they can't handle situations that they can't figure out. And when you take that into a workplace situation with different personalities, different needs, I think it's very problematic. So my sister, who I love very much, she's amazing. She's one of the leaders in health OA in the United States, actually, with Medicaid. And she said something to me. She was like, you have compassion, but then the work still has to get done. And that is every manager's challenge, right?
Mhm.
So my question to you is, what has your experience been after these moments? Was there a rubber band effect? And then, of course, given what you're talking about with what you do, how does that relate to any of your DI work or DI advocacy? And what is the relationship between you advancing this type of lived experience, sharing and advocacy and outreach, with the work that you're doing? I'm sure that they must be related and that they benefit each other in some way.
Yes, there's a lot there. I think one of the things is I've been fortunate to have really amazing managers who are invested in understanding the root of issues. And I think, like to your point, when you were struggling with PTSD, that's something that doesn't just affect you for a week or a month. That's something that can affect you for the rest of your life. And so I really feel like understanding goes a lot deeper than just giving someone a day off or having one conversation with someone. I feel like my managers have demonstrated to me like that can be an ongoing conversation. And I also know that my needs change depending on honestly the day. And so continuing that conversation with people you trust is helpful in combating that rubber band effect. Um, I also think, especially everyone in the Caribbean is so relationship based too. And I feel like that's such an important part of this is being there for all of the moments, the successful moments, the rough moments, and keeping that community close to you is the best way to provide balance to what you might go through at work.
Oh, thank you so much for that.
Of
I'm
course,
jumping a little bit here.
you are. You are. Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing and for the
but,
question.
but I mean, I'm very excited about this discussion, Natalia. One of the things that we're doing this year is that we're going to be reaching back out to our speakers to kind of do some follow-ups. Not only because you're from Puerto Rico, which is amazing. I have some amazing people that I've worked with from Puerto Rico. I know it's a very vibrant community. I definitely am looking forward to following up with you afterwards. I now have you on WhatsApp, so I will be messaging you. And I actually
Great.
been doing some lived experience work with the WHO for the small island developing states, and I think you might
Great.
be an excellent person to share some of these stories as well, because it's not just about women being successful telling lived experience. It's about the lived experience being authentic, and not
Yes.
everyone has the ability to tell these stories, which is one of the things that we're hoping to address. So I'm going to go after we introduce our next speaker. Thank you so much, Natalia, for joining us today.
Thank
We are
you.
going to get some more of you. So, guys, she's still going to be around with some future content that we're going to be creating. So, thank you so much, Natalia.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So, hello, Nicholas.
Hello, Maria.
Nicholas is here to help me with some juggling, guys. It's because we have so many amazing speakers, but it was a very busy month. So, we want to make sure that people can all be here. And because of that, I have to jump into another recording. So Nicholas is going to help us by introducing. Well, I can introduce Zana really quickly, but he's going to handle the post questions with Zana. So I'm just going to add Zana to the stream really briefly. Hi, Zana. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I am good. I'm excited because I have all of these amazing women who are just like, telling stories that are so important. I mean, today was just such an amazing day. To be honest, I was just completely blown away by the talks earlier. Because initially, you sometimes feel like after we've done this for 2 years that we may have heard everything, but we haven't. Like every year, it's always we spend like half of the session with almost like this. Wow, okay, we weren't expecting that. So I'm
Absolutely.
very much looking forward to your talk. I'm gonna give a very brief bio of Zana, which is such a cool name, by the way. Zana.
Thank you.
Zana Hart. Wow. So
Shout
Zana
out
is
my
an
parents.
Oh, yeah, your parents definitely win some points, and we don't know them, but we know that they're some creative people. They're creators, are they?
Surprisingly, no, but I'll
Oh,
definitely get into that during my talk.
oh, look at that. See, universe kind of brought us there already. So Sana is a Trinidadian art director and designer with 6 plus years of experience. As the owner of a micro design firm, Nicholas, we really need to look into what a micro design firm is in the after question. Because that was one of my big questions when I read the bio earlier. Its aim is to disrupt the status quo, yes, and be a collaborative guide for brands to build their creative strategy and actualize their visions. What important work! Her work empowers you to tell the transformative stories and build relative visual identities that you connect to. Oh my gosh. You should have really been part of our day yesterday as well, because what an amazing creative day that would have been. It would have been great to have you in that room as well. A unique melee of a Caribbean heritage and studies in the UK and Germany. Wow. Inform her sensibilities in Northern European design and global perspective of culture. In turn, this intercontinental exposure has earned her a diverse clientele, having worked with the likes of Lonsdale and Saatchi, Nivea, Saint Laurent, Acne, for Freedoms, and more. Her equally heterogeneous portfolio draws on her creative strengths from art direction, brand identity, digital strategy, creative leadership, and partnerships, editorial, and web design. So, with no further ado, thank you so much, Zana, for being here with us today. And we're going to let you get into your talk.
Thank you for the introduction, Maria, and thank you to the speakers before. Your talks were so enlightening, and I was really engaged, particularly with yours, Natalia. So thank you so much for your talk. I equally have never used this platform before, so please let me know if I am doing this correctly. Hopefully you can see my screen. But yes, I will be doing a talk on the wavering line of design and thought. And I just want to keep this as casual and informative as possible, but also a bit personal, because I think going into design as a career for me was somewhat of a bit of a sort of winding path, because there's sort of like this very patterned way of going into graphic design, particularly in Trinidad. And my experience of sort of disrupting that was really, really enlightening. And I really want to share that experience with you, in case that any sort of designers are listening in and they feel like they want to have any sort of hybrid careers as the one that I'm developing currently. So I wanted to start with a personal picture that was taken by me when I lived in Mexico City in 2021. I decided to go there because, one, I wanted to learn Spanish, and I really needed something that felt very metropolitan, but also just had a bit of a pulse that was close to home, had that similar kind of warmth. And walking by the sort of like central part of the city, I was really inspired by this mural, Soy Porque Somos. And this essentially became the core to my foundation of who I am, but also who I am as a designer. And it was birthed in Colombia by an Afro-Colombian political movement in 2021, and it then expanded across Latin America. And it pretty much shares the meaning of the Zulu term Ubuntu, which is I am because we are, or everything that I am or that exists within me is because of the community that I fall within. And the reason why I wanted to start with this slide in particular is because I think that this is how essentially design works. As designers, every project that you work on and every collaboration that comes your way is so meaningful because you have to consider the audience that you design for. And that's why research is also so pivotal to what makes good design. So I'm going to essentially explore how those two intersect. And we can just have, yeah, a casual conversation about how that has been meaningful for my personal journey. So as Maria mentioned, I am currently part art director, but also part curator. And what that means is my art director life involves partnering with brands to build their creative strategy and working alongside them for brand identity, digital strategy, creative partnerships, editorial, web design. And having a micro design firm as a Caribbean woman has enabled me to be able to have that sort of outreach to speak with clients from different parts of the Americas and be able to also open the floor to collaboration with other Caribbean women, other Caribbean creatives, or even just people that I meet along the way through networking. And I think it's so important to have that sort of playing field as a designer because I think the traditional pattern that I was speaking about previously in the Caribbean is that we're expected to join an advertising agency. And while that is also another way of having a design career, I think it's equally important to explore the horizons of what design can enable you to do. So some of the clients I've worked with, as Maria also mentioned, are Ade Deshe. They are a fashion brand based in Oakland, Designer Island, Brondell, Four Freedoms, Lonsdale Sashi and Sachi in Trinidad, Nebbia Inc. based in North America, specifically San Francisco, New Fire Festival, Practice Design, and Salon Acme, which is in Mexico City. And for some reason along my journey, I always had this sort of need or desire to push my researcher ticks a bit more. And that's where curation sort of came in. And I started doing my master's degree at the Royal College of Art in London, where I'm currently based, in history of design. And since starting my master's, that has led me to curate some exhibitions with the likes of the Victoria and Albert Museum, Dada Gallery, and also develop my own brand called Food World, which will be pioneering a later exhibition in September called Keep in Touch, The Poetics of Home. And as a curator, what that role does is it enables me to become a liaison between artist and museum, or artist and object. Essentially, that sort of line between the two conversations, or the 2 points of conversation rather, and connecting them. And I think because I've had this experience in curation, I've then been able to become a more informed designer, because doing the research on objects, doing the research on pieces, and having this sort of contextualized understanding of why we create what we create helps you then combine that with your skills, your design skills, into creating a much more thoughtful project. So where do I sit within design and curation, and why does that mean anything to you? The reason why I'm doing this talk in the first place is because I want someone, if it's even just one person, to leave this feeling like they can create their own career for themselves within design. You don't have to study graphic design for 4 years and be a graphic designer for the rest of your life. There are many ways in which you can create something that is creative and meaningful to you with the help of design. And that's because there are so many overlapping features within design itself. So what I did here was I kind of put together these sort of side-by-side triangles of information that align with different types of design, but more specifically within my career. So to the left, I have design as industry in a triangle. And those sort of facets relate to, you get a brief, you have to do the research. That then generates the idea. That then funnels the process and therefore production of the design. And those three things are really integral to having a well-functioning design. And synonymously within that sort of research bubble of design thinking's triangle often deals with design characteristics. For example, what materials are being used, why those colors? Is there a reason why there is calligraphy being used as opposed to a certain sort of typography? Then how is it produced? How much of it was produced? What does this have to say about company versus small business? And then how it was consumed by society. What does that tell us about the demographic that the design lived within? What does that tell us about the financial situation of a society? And having these two coexist, I think, is super I don't want to use the word meta, but there is some sort of conjunction between the two, because for me as a designer, starting off 6 years into the business and then deciding to pivot just slightly into curation, there's sort of this 360 consideration of how design works and also is considered. And that helps me then think about the projects that I'm doing in a more thoughtful as well as impactful way. So I wanted to use a case study that I worked on with Lonsdale, Saatchi and Saatchi about a couple years ago. And the brief was that we had to brand Trinidad, essentially creating a logo design for Trinidad so that it can represent the different facets of tourism that they wanted to sell to the rest of the world. So that could be ecotourism, business tourism, you name it. And I was working alongside the branding team, and we were coming up with a sort of strategy of what is expected from us versus what are the things that may be a bit more subtle as far as what we think Trinidad could be or what we think Trinidad is most notable for. So the research part of it, I led in a way that we just kind of went off and just kind of started from scratch, as if we were never born there. We were just like working with bare bones, exploring, having conversations with people, going around different points of Trinidad and sort of really just hearing what people had to say. One of the things that stood out to me the most was the fact that language is sort of really integral to the fabric of our country. The way that we speak, the way that our accent sort of like transcends this sort of immediacy for people globally. You hear how Trinidadians speak and you know that they're Trinidadian. And so we went around the island, essentially recording how people spoke or how people said the word Trinidad. And we sort of created this sort of like visual mapping of how sound could be visualized. And so that's why you can see to the right, some of the letters are sort of like stretched or condensed to sort of like mimic the intonation and the stress of syllables. And from there, we created a visual system where Trinidad then is this sort of like musical script where visuals expand, condense. The word is like, it has this sort of motion to it, even though it's quite a static output. So that was a really, really memorable process for me going into this project, because we were doing the research, we were thinking about how this impacts Trinidadians seeing it, how this impacts international people seeing it, how this impacts the way that we can visualize a country on posters versus motion. And I think that that's really important. And it speaks a lot to what I was previously talking about with the sort of combination of design and design thinking. And from there, we generated quite a lot of visuals as to how this branding could be treated. You can see in some instances, the typeset is pretty standard and it sits comfortably on an image. And in some cases, there's this sort of like breaking of barriers in terms of having 3 sets, having 3 columns, or it existing on a digital space versus a printed space. And yeah, it was so fun. I had a really, really, really great time. Unfortunately, they did not choose this project, but nevertheless, it was really, really memorable for me. It was a key sort of moment in my career where I knew that research just meant a whole lot to me as a designer. And I really wanted to explore that a bit further and sort of build a hybrid career for myself. Yeah, I want to stop there. And I just want to thank everyone again for tuning in and just for giving a listening ear. I'm really, really, really looking forward to seeing and reading all of your questions, comments. Please reach out to me. I would love to hear from any sort of designers or even budding curators who are from the Caribbean. I would love to have more conversations with you. So thank you so very much. And yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for that, Zana. I really like that level of sophistication in design. I just want to speak a bit my areas from the developer side, so you could understand our struggles with design and making things look pretty.
Yeah.
I just really want to appreciate the level of sophistication that you had, because I was watching that end, I was watching the Trinidad. It's like, why is that so? And the way how you brought about visualizing the pronunciation and actually represented it in the word, I think that was so fascinating. I wonder if you could shed some more light on those other kind of things that that appear in your creative process that people who are not from the design world could probably appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked with multiple web developers and anyone on the front end of coding before, and somehow I've just always enjoyed working with developers because there's a different language to be learned within that sort of practice, and I think the same can be said about design. And I think that's essentially what I want to begin with. Design should be treated as a language. You need to take the time to digest it, learn it, speak it, have conversations with people about it, because that's why the research is so important to have a successful design. As far as other skill sets, I did graphic design for my bachelor's degree for 3 years at Cardiff University. And it was really important for me because the way that the course was structured, it allowed a lot of group work. And I know that most graphic designers would disagree with me because group work is basically, it can be challenging, to put it plainly. But what you will realize is that in your future, in your career, you will be guaranteed working with multiple people per project, no matter what sort of like path you choose, whether it's that you want to have your own firm, whether you work with a company, you are going to work with other people when it comes to working on anything design related. And even if it's someone that is using a different practice to you, you need to be comfortable with the fact that you have to sort of engage in order for this project to be successful. And that's one thing I would really, really stress on. Does that
Awesome.
answer your question?
Awesome. Yeah, in a way it does. It definitely gives us insight. I was just more curious. You spoke about your dabbling in your beginnings in graphic design. I wonder if you could speak more about your career path, because we often get a lot of young ladies and of course young men as well who are listening on these speakers, and we have all these rock star speakers, and we just want to get an idea of the path. Like, how do you find yourself where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So after I graduated, I was not interested in the sort of traditional method that we have in Trinidad as far as like entering a advertising agency or like an establishment that specializes in advertising, because I felt like I really wanted to work across the board and a bit more on things that were a bit branding related. And unfortunately, at the time, there weren't a lot of branding firms existing within Trinidad. So my way out of that was by creating my own business. And I cannot stress enough how difficult that was. Entering a space that was very, first of all, male dominated. Secondly, it was so concentrated because most clients, if not all businesses, go to advertising agencies to do branding. So you have to really put yourself out there and really have these professional conversations with clients and try to convince them why they should invest in a small branding studio. That was probably the first 2 years of my career. And I want to be as transparent as possible because I don't want anyone to be sitting down and looking at this and thinking that like, oh, it's so easy and that I can just, start my studio tomorrow and I'm going to be a success, because it takes a lot of commitment and a lot of hard work. That said, it's interesting that you say this because that you asked this, because I had a conversation earlier with my partner about, this sort of like memorability that people have. And there are so many other factors that can influence what makes people memorable. But I think ultimately, when you yourself listen to the person that you're speaking to, and you sort of hold on to those very special things about them, and you personalize that conversation that you have, that's what gets you the relationship with the client. And I think that was sort of my strength, because I am a bit more of an introverted person. I'm very much a listener. I'm very much more on the behind the scenes. So I'm a bit more observant of the little things, as opposed to being sort of like forthright with networking and negotiating. So I used my strength of making things personal, making people feel like they're being listened to, like applying that to networking through email, through having phone calls, having sort of like coffee meetups, and sort of developing those relationships. And the better or the more time that I had to sort of make that or master that, I was able to take that to the other step. And when I moved to Mexico City, that's when I met Salon Acme. I worked with them for a year. It was an amazing art fair that they have annually. I was able to generate a lot of visual assets for them. And then it kind of just like kept going on from there and there. And I think that's what really is important for any creative role, to be honest. I think that when you own any sort of creative business, you have to be as personable as possible, but you also have to be yourself. And that then, like I said in my talk earlier, I sort of craved this need for research and writing because I really had a love for it. And it was something that I stressed a lot in a lot of my briefs and sort of like conversations with clients, because I think research is really important when it comes to design. And that led me to curation. I saw a lot of gaps in the art world and the design world in Trinidad, and I really wanted to contribute to the telling of our histories and the telling of our stories through art. So yeah, that's still TBD, but I'm really enjoying that process and that phase of my career. But I will never leave design. I think it's really just a marriage of the two positions.
Okay, awesome, awesome. I like what you said there. I think I've like we had many other speakers on, and I seem to see a common trend of when the really successful ones who really break in, making waves in entrepreneurship, that edge of being really interpersonal with their clients, in that they don't really give a cookie cutter solution. They're more willing to work, close with them. Would you agree with our approach as like a general tip for new and upcoming entrepreneurs, and in kind of carving out, that niche for themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the same way that you and I can pick up on if somebody's using a templated conversation, a client can easily pick up on that too. And they are going to think that, well, any work that I ask of this person is going to be, I don't know, like not made with care. And I think that that's something that any person that is willing to pay for a service is expecting. They want something to be done with care. They want it to matter. So I definitely urge people to be more aware of the way that you have conversations with people, because you never know how that will affect the relationship that you have with them in work.
All right, excellent. So I wonder if we're just about to get in coming time to our next speaker, although I'm not seeing them queued up just yet, but we would have just a few more questions. So in terms of general advice to young ladies who are probably listening right now, what advice you'd give to them, especially if you facing the challenges that you have experienced in making your way in your field? I'm sure they could have a lot of experiences that might make them feel, a bit discouraged or intimidated. I wonder what was useful for you in your experience.
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, the field there are a lot of flaws, and I am saying this very candidly because I went to university with a class of majority women, and I left university entering an industry that was majority men. And that sort of disparity is very concerning, or it was very concerning and continues to be concerning, for me as a designer, because you then enter workspaces being seen as a monolith. There have been many times where I have worked with clients where the project has started, I've submitted drafts, and despite the efforts of the work that I have put in and the research that I've put in, they've ultimately said that my designs were very girly. And I think that there are times when a lot of women designers experience that, even though the design is probably not girly at all. And or what is defined as traditionally girly. Um, and there are those moments where you have to realize that choosing your client is equally as important as your client choosing you. So I know that there are going to be many times, and also this is also going to sound very ridiculous. There are going to be many times when a client approaches you and you are going to have this sense that they're probably not the best fit for you. I urge you to kindly decline the offer, because more than often your intuition is telling you the right thing, where that client is probably not going to ever agree with what you suggest with them. They're probably not going to be interested in what you have to offer in the first place. And they're probably not going to be interested in paying what you have included in your quotation, which is a huge problem. So I think that part of being not just a business owner, but also a designer is you have to choose your clients as much as your clients choose you. And the more that you curate those clients is the more that you will be able to attract those sort of clients that have a common ethos and would be willing to invest in your work. I wish I was told this when I was starting up in my career, because there were times when I was just trudging through and trying to get the project done and feeling completely demotivated because they weren't interested in what I was giving them in the first place. And it's so important to know that you can just let that go. And somebody else is going to come and they're going to really appreciate the work that you're doing. And they're going to want to invest and they're going to want to listen to your suggestions because they take you seriously as a professional. So I urge you, please, 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 that is absolutely key. You have that agency, so definitely use it.
Wow, that makes so much sense, but I think in a way it's very unintuitive. The thought of you as an entrepreneur, you're probably trying to get every opportunity you can get, but it makes sense to turn down opportunities that would be too difficult in the long run, because I can't imagine you won't really be happy working in such an environment, and it might inhibit in you bringing out your best work. So maybe it's better to actually forego some clients and 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 work with clients you actually want to work with, so you can get the best quality out. I know the word of mouth kind of do its thing. So I think that's a very important point that a lot of people could miss. Thank you so much for that.
Of course. It's not just about difficulty, it's also like you don't want to waste your time, their time. It just doesn't make sense. And I think being conscious of your own intuition and being able to trust that you have a good sense of character in a work relationship is really key and important.
Yes, I agree with that as well. So, Zana, thank you so much for being part of our Tech Summit. We're very happy to have you on board. We're very much looking out to see you in different engagements. Are there any last thoughts you want to share with our audience?
I just wanted to say thank you so very much, everyone, for tuning in. It's almost crazy to think that I'm giving a talk. I remember when I first started in my career, I was going to a lot of different keynotes and listening to women in design and in tech, giving advice and feeling like I don't know if I'll ever get there. So this feels very sentimental for me. And I hope that whatever I shared has struck any sort of chord in anyone. Or please feel free to message me, reach out. I'd love to hear anything that anyone has to say with regards to their own personal journeys. But yes, thank you so much. Especially Maria, thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Of course, Sana. I'm sure you've already said so many things that even struck with me, that gave me really food for thought. So I think it'll be definitely as valuable with our audience. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Okay, so I think we're going to have a bit of a switch up in our talks. Our next talk, I think I'm seeing here, is just give me a moment. So I believe this is a pre-recording that will be a presentation that I'll be putting on in a bit. Right. Next we have Sekoa Patrick. She is a global program manager within developer relations at Google, leading women tech makers. This program aims to provide visibility, community, and resources for women to thrive in technology. Prior to joining the developer relations team, she was part of the Chrome enterprise team, owing customers first initiatives to drive adoption and scale of the Chrome product. Sekoa holds 2 degrees from Auburn University, one in industrial and systems engineering, as well as an MBA with a concentration in information systems. War Eagle. Outside of her core role at Google, she dabbles a bit into real estate investing, which has become more of a passion project. Above all, she enjoys traveling, working on food, and spending time with her family, friends, and her sweet dog, Drizzy. So just give me a moment and we'll queue up that video for you.
Hello, everyone. I am Sequoia Patrick, the global lead of the Women Tech Makers program, and I am Hello, everyone. I am Sequoia Patrick, the global lead of the Women Tech Makers program, and I am truly excited to be here today to talk with you during your Caribbean IWD event. I want to talk about the importance of building a global DEI ecosystem, especially within the tech industry. So as we all know, the tech industry is one of the most important and influential industries in the world. It is also one of the most diverse industries with people from all over the world working within it. However, there is still challenges that need to be addressed in order to create a healthy and diverse tech ecosystem. One of the biggest challenges is the lack of diversity in leadership positions. According to a study by the National Center for Women in Information Technology, women make up only 26% of the tech workforce and only 12% of tech leadership positions. This lack of diversity can lead to a number of problems, including a lack of innovation, a lack of understanding of the user's needs, and a lack of trust. A lack of innovation because studies show that teams with diverse members that have people from different backgrounds bring different perspectives, as well as different ideas to the table. A lack of understanding of users' needs because tech products and services are often designed by people who are not a good representation of the people who use them, leading to products and services that are not user-friendly, therefore not adopted because they do not meet the needs of all the users. And finally, a lack of trust. People from underrepresented groups may be less likely to use tech products and services if they do not feel they are represented in the tech industry. They will simply shy away from those, feeling like it's just not for me. So there are a number of things that can be done to address these challenges, including, first, you have to promote diversity in your hiring and promotion practices. Companies and organizations need to make a conscious effort to hire and promote people from underrepresented groups. This can be done by setting goals for diversity, creating inclusion hiring practices, and providing mentorship and development opportunities for these groups. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about mentorship in depth because I think it's so important a little later on. So next, you have to support diversity and inclusion initiatives. There are a number of organizations that are working to promote diversity and inclusion in tech. So how can you help, you might ask? Well, you can support by donating money, by volunteering your time, and spreading the word about the work that they are doing. Third, be sure you are educating the public about the importance of diversity. Many people are not aware of the benefits of diversity in tech, and we need to challenge them to think about the world in a new way. This is so important to educate them in order to build support for the change, as well as educating them on what may be their own biases that they may not truly be aware of. Finally, it truly starts within. So we can start by being more aware of our own biases and prejudices. We can also challenge ourselves to be more open to new experiences and new people. Hold ourselves and others accountable means calling out discrimination and microaggressions and speaking up when you see injustice. We can also be allies. Be allies to the people from those marginalized groups by listening to their experiences, educating ourselves about their issues, and standing up for them when they are being discriminated against. This means recognizing and appreciating the different cultures, backgrounds, and experiences of people that may not necessarily look like you, or come from where you come from, or, just are in your region of the world. I truly do believe that building a global DEI ecosystem is one of the most important things we can do to create a better future for our world. When we create a world where everyone is valued and respected, we create a world that is more innovative, more creative, and more prosperous, and where everyone belongs. By working together, we can build a global DEI ecosystem that is more just, equitable, and inclusive for everyone. I'm so inspired by the many people who are working to do just that. I'm inspired by the students who are speaking out against injustice, the activists who are fighting for change, and the leaders who are creating a more inclusive workplace, like our Women Tech Maker ambassadors. So speaking of students, or the younger generation, or even someone who just wants to make a career change, that's why mentoring is so important. And to create opportunities for mentoring underrepresented groups in tech will really help to nurture those tech careers. Mentoring can be both a valuable experience for the mentor and the mentee. It's not a one-way street. For the mentor, mentoring can be a way to give back and help others to succeed. It can also be a way to stay up to date on the latest trends in the tech industry. I, for one, know that I learn from the younger generation all the time. For the mentee, mentoring can be a way to learn from someone who has more experience, who can give them advice on career development, networking, and even better ways of approaching conflict in their careers. There is a reason that companies do this well, have great success in achieving their diversity targets. And that's because mentoring helps to increase diversity, improve retention rates, promote innovation, provide career development opportunities, which could include things like providing access to training programs, conferences, and other resources. Build a stronger tech community by creating a supportive work environment and a culture of inclusion and respect. I could go on and on. But more than anything, it's a great way to give back to the tech community and to help others succeed. If you are interested in mentoring in tech, I encourage you to get involved in whatever capacity your schedule allows. So you might ask, how are we as women tech makers working towards these goals of building a healthy tech ecosystem where everyone has the opportunity to succeed regardless of their backgrounds? So our mission for Women Tech Makers is to provide women with community, resources, and visibility so that all women can thrive in tech. Community, so that they have that safe space to go to and for that community to rely on. Resources like training and mentoring, and access to help in furthering their lives and their careers, and visibility to ensure we are telling the amazing stories of the women in our program because we see them as role models and know how important it is for others to see the same. For young girls to come across that video or that blog post or woman being featured on a panel discussion and think, hey, she looks like me, and if she can do it, I can too. So as I wrap up, I'll talk a little bit about our theme for this year for International Women's Day, and it's Dare to Be. And that can show up however it resonates with you. But I'll just pose these questions. Are you daring to be bold? Are you daring to be brave? Are you daring to be the change that you want to see in the world? If not, I do challenge you to be that change. As I mentioned earlier, it starts within, with you. We all know that doing this work isn't easy, but it is so incredibly important. We all have a role to play in creating a better future for our world. Together, let's go out and change the narrative around the global tech ecosystem, making sure that everyone has a seat at the table. Thank you for your time.
All right. All right. Thank you so much for that, Sakura. And that more or less brings us to the end of the talks for today. But please don't go anywhere. We still have much more talks left for you all. And you can check out our schedule at iwdtechsummit.com/schedule 2023. This is just the fourth day of the event. Remember, we have more days to come, more amazing speakers. So thanks again for joining us. And we do hope to see you all tomorrow for more talks from our amazing speakers. Till then, see you next time.